You are listening to Walking Home from the ICU. We will be exploring how to save and preserve lives in the ICU. All opinions and views shared are unaffiliated with any organization. Tyler, Amber, thank you so much for joining us today. Today we have Tyler Lentz with us. He was admitted to the ICU a little over a year ago, right? As a 32-year-old with septic shock due to group A streptococcus pneumonia. When he came in, he was life flighted from another hospital in another state. He was already intubated. And as soon as he got to this hospital, he was woken up, the sedation was taken off. Yet he was still in severe septic shock and required impressive vasopressor support, and ended up the next day with severe ARDS and required pronation, paralytics, and sedatives. He was just not getting better with pronation and everything that was being done, and it was decided to send him to another hospital for ECMO. Unfortunately, at that other hospital, that CVICU, they also continued to keep him awake on ECMO and mobilized. And he's had amazing outcomes. And I feel so fortunate to be in their kitchen right now, talking to Amber and Tyler about Tyler's crazy journey and what it was like to be awake and walking on the ventilator and on ECMO. So Tyler, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So we were just talking about when you first came into the hospital and were woken up in the setting of septic shock, you weren't totally with it. But yet Amber was saying that you were able to be dangled at the bedside. You got up and walked even 75 feet, even with the vasopressors and the high ventilator support. You were writing notes, joking with your coworkers. Amber, what was that like for you to see that?
So he was awake for most of that day, and it was very encouraging to me because I felt like, okay, things are going to be okay. He's awake. He is answering questions. He's making jokes. And it was just an encouraging moment of he's going to be okay. And it, gave me hope that he was still there and that he was himself.
Do you remember any of that, Tyler?
No. So kind of a timeline of events. I woke up the morning of December 8th with just sore throat, knew I had a fever, and just general weakness. I told myself it's strep throat. I can go another 24 hours. I'll be home. Go to the doctor, get my antibiotics. Well, by 2 a.m. that evening is when I was throwing up blood, coughing up blood, severe diarrhea, severe vomiting, and I crawled to where Amber was sleeping and woke her up. And that's when we drove to Evanston. Just sitting in the ER in Evanston, I was aware that I was there, but I couldn't talk to the doctor and explain my symptoms to him. It was very hard to get out just words. So at that point, I realized, okay, things aren't good. I could barely communicate. And then the doctor, we did an x-ray. I tested positive for strep, and he said, I have right lung pneumonia. You'll be here for a couple days. You'll go home. They put me on CPAP right away, and then went to BiPAP. And being on BiPAP when you're struggling to breathe is the worst feeling. If you've ever felt like you're in a confined space and you can't breathe, that's how I felt. So they gave me Ativan, Versed. After that, that was it. That's all I remember. Next time I remembered anything was December 23rd.
So how many days was that?
So December 8th to the 23rd is what I don't remember. What's that? 16 days, I think. Yeah. So, but between all that time frame, I remember very, very little things that I would bring up to Amber, and she'd be like, yeah, that did happen. So there's a few episodes that I do remember. But in the meantime, it was just all very vivid, lucid, long-lasting dreams.
And what were those like? Because I know that, I think you were delirious from the septic shock. Also, when you were prone for, I want to say 2 or 3 days, maybe longer. I remember.
It was about four days. And then we were transferred with ECMO.
Okay, so that whole time you were on sedation.
Yeah.
What were those dreams like?
The best way I can explain it when people ask is think when you have a dream at night when you're sleeping, you wake up, and if you don't tell somebody right away about your dream, you forget about it and you just move on throughout your day. But to this day, I can tell you details, smells, the people that were in these dreams. There's about 4 distinct dreams that lasted a very long time. I can't tell you when the dreams happened during my experience, other than maybe one of them was just a quick brief of it. I'm on the USAR team with the fire department. It's a search and rescue team. And we got deployed to New York. There's a big storm that happened. It's a national team. So we got sent there just to run 911 calls for New York. I was put on an engine company with a crew. We ran calls. We went to the station. It's just a normal station life, running normal calls. The storm was so bad on the streets, we ended up rolling our engine. I ended up breaking my neck. They transported me to a hospital in New York. And when I woke up, which I think was December 23rd, I thought I was in New York with a broken neck, injured. And it took several days before Amber kept repeating the story of why I'm here. So that was the only dream I could kind of relate time frame. It had to have been towards the end when I started waking up, because I truly thought that that's why I was where I was and what happened.
And you woke up on ECMO, right?
Yep.
Yep.
I woke up on ECMO, still had the ET tube placed, still strapped to the bed, complete confusion, very anxious.
So it was scary to wake up without any context.
Yep. Can't talk.
Mm-hmm.
Can't do anything. Can't move my head. Can't move my arms. So it was pretty intense.
And how long after that until you were mobile and oriented? Or were you, or was he walking?
When he was coming, like when we first got to the hospital for ECMO, he would start coming off sedation, and then he'd have to get like a chest tube placed. And so he'd be sedated again for that. And then he'd start coming off that, and then we'd have another chest tube. He ended up with 4 chest tubes.
Yeah.
And so it was just, that first week was kind of hard because it was constant. Okay, he's almost off sedation. Okay, we need another chest tube, a continuous cycle of that. But once we were off that cycle, he was doing the exercise bike in bed almost immediately. And he was still kind of loopy, but he was giving it his all. And I think he biked like a mile that first day. And then from then, it was constant. Every day was a different exercise or something, even just like getting up in bed or sitting up or standing. And then from then on, it was just constant. And he was awesome at hitting those every week. But he started almost instantly right when he was off sedation.
And it wasn't just the physical. I remember they would do cognitive skills with me. They'd show me pictures and they'd say, point to what you see and match it with this card. So it was a lot of, they were already making me start to think, use my brain, But it was just, I only remember that so very, very little. So it had to be early on in my time at the U.
Yeah.
But when I really started to come around cognitively was Christmas Day, because I knew I was scheduled to get my trach. I was excited to get this tube out of my mouth, and they just kept delaying the surgery time because they had other patients with high priority. So I just remember being stressed, like, oh, let's get this thing done. And as soon as the trach was placed, I felt like that's when things just got better quicker.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
What did you see mobility do for his brain during that time?
I felt like it pushed him, and I think it made him work, like made his mind work with his body. And I felt like I can see in his eyes, it was hard a lot of times, but I also felt like it was gratifying for him, because when it got to where he was walking more, he would be so like bragging about how far he walked and what he did this day. And so the competitive nature in him and the, fighting nature, I think, came out. And I think it gave him, things to do to get out of there. And I think he knew that.
Well, that's what I appreciate about the physical therapy team there and the nurses. Before I would do PT, they'd say, this is what you did yesterday. This is how far you got. This is our goal today. So it already is, okay, I got to beat my goal.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good. And they were just 100% supportive. It was a huge mental game with myself and just trusting the staff. And because if I didn't have their support and their recommendations and their past stories, they told me of other patients that would do it,
Mm-hmm.
then I don't think I would have done it. It was so mental, because I went from being extremely healthy and active and could do half marathons and work out 7 days a week to now I've lost 35 pounds. I can't even sit up in bed.
And that happened in what span of time that you got that week?
From December 8th to
Christmas. Yeah.
I literally lost, I couldn't even squeeze a stress ball. I was that weak.
And that's such a drastic example, because not all of our patients are young and healthy. They're not all 32-year-old firefighters that come in.
Mm-hmm.
And yet that healthy, could become that weak in that amount of time. When most of our patients are geriatrics that come in that are already on the fence of immobility, that are already weak. I know that we get nervous in the ICU to get those people mobile and active, but this is a good example of why that's important, because if they, from their baseline, slide back over those few weeks intubated, then will they ever get back to where they were? Yeah. So that's pretty impressive. I remember you were so muscular that I, out of the corner of my eye, I think in my subconscious, I knew that you had it, you weren't a PEEP of 20. That was really high. So I think pneumothorax was always on the radar. And out of the corner of my eye, I saw an elevated pectoralis. And I, just for a split second, I kind of gasped inside of me. And I'm like, oh no, pneumothorax. And then I realized, like, no, he's just really muscular. I'm just not used to seeing patients like that.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, after a few weeks, you got to the point not even being able to sit up or squeeze a stress ball.
Yeah. It was very depressing. I literally had to learn to walk again. I couldn't remember how to walk. It was literally, all right, Tyler, put your right foot out, put your left foot out. Oh, your gait's too linear. You spread your hips, and it was just so frustrating, And then on top of that, you're exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
You can't breathe. You're on a ventilator. You can feel your blood pressure through the roof. They're like, oh, your pressure's at 180 over 110. We got to take a break. And then I start thinking, holy crap, I'm going to stroke out. Just with the ECMO and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
Are they pushing me too hard? Because I'll keep going, but should I not keep going? It's just a mind game.
And you had enough medical background to worry about those things.
Yeah, and that was the bad part too, because I write on the whiteboard, because that's how I communicate. I'd say vent settings or P02, and they tell me, and I'd be like, oh my God.
What did it mean to you to be able to be informed about those things, ask questions? I know that we as medical professionals think that this is going to be too traumatizing for people to be aware of their critical illness, that it's better for them to be sedated and quote unquote asleep,
right,
which you already experienced. So what was it like, or what does it mean to you to have been informed and be able to ask questions and communicate during that time?
That was the most important thing, I think. If I didn't know what was going on, it would stress me out. I would see I don't know how many drip rates I had going at a time, but I'd try to figure out what meds I was on, and then I'd think, okay, I'm on pressors, I'm on diuretics, I'm on heparin, or I'm on Coumadin, and then the nurse would come in and they'd, shine their light in the ECMO oxygenator and they'd say, oh, we got a lot of clots in here, and I'm just like, I would stress out about it, but I knew that they were on top of it. You know what I mean?
And you could express your concerns.
Kind of.
He struggled a little bit. The whole time on ECMO, he wasn't able to talk. He didn't get his speaking valve with his trach till rehab. And so he relied heavily on the board. But for me, when he was able to finally start asking questions and vocalize himself, it was huge because I wanted him to make a lot of decisions. And I appreciated that. Like, he asked for his trach. They were going to put it off and I was going to put it off. I didn't know if that would be something he wanted, but he was alert and he said, no, I want the trach. And I was thankful because I was like, good, you picked it. That's your choice. And after that, he made all his decisions, which was nice for me because that was hard for me to make those.
Another good thing that there was the majority of the nurses or the docs, they do their rounds in the morning and then they'd come tell me what the plan is for the day.
Mm-hmm.
I'm the type of person that needs to know the plan for the day, what we're going to do, what are the goals. And then if I didn't get that, I was, what are we doing? We need to do something, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was nice to have the plan, the goals, if any surgeries were planned for the day, just to mentally prepare. It's such a mental game in there that it's crazy.
And it sounds so miserable to have to go through all of that and be aware of the peril that your life is in.
Mm-hmm.
But whereas you've experienced both, being sedated, having delirium, and then being awake for some of the worst of it, what is your preference?
Being awake.
How come?
For sure. Just because there were times where I would come off the sedation and then whatever we were doing, the bike or trying to sit up or just something, and then all of a sudden they'd be like, I remember saying, oh, we got to sedate him again. And then I just go back into delirium mode,
Mm-hmm.
hallucinations. I remember being awake semi-consciously, but I would see things in my room, and it wasn't comforting.
Mm-hmm.
It was very anxiety-ridden, depression.
I feel like whenever he was sedated too, it took so long for him to come out of it that I just felt like it was just wasted time. And it was frustrating me. And then once he was off sedation, we went through a week where he wasn't sleeping at all. And then we were like, okay, now he's up all night.
My sleep cycle is.
And so then we had to give him sleep meds at night. And then we were just going through the problem of now he's not sleeping, so he doesn't have any energy because he's not sleeping. And so it was just like.
And coming off the meds is a horrible feeling. You feel like a drug addict. They go through withdrawals and you have that foggy head and you just feel like crap and you don't want to do anything, So I didn't want to be sedated. I didn't want to be given pain meds because just the coming off it was miserable.
Yeah, that's so interesting. We just don't get that insight.
Yeah,
from
I would almost rather deal with the pain. And there's some days that I did. They'd ask me, do you want your pain meds? I say, no, I'll just deal with it.
And that's the nice thing too. When a patient can tell us if they're in pain and what they want, that way we know that pain is being treated and what the patient wants. And if we don't have to give so much pain medication, just assuming, because the pain medication itself, the narcotics can cause the delirium, hold everything back, causes all the other problems.
I requested more anti-anxiety meds than I did pain meds. Not like as high dose anxiety, just something to take the edge off, right? Because being confined to the bed, not moving, nobody wants to do that.
No, and anxiety in those situations is real. And what I hear from survivors is that even when they're sedated, they have anxiety. So I want to know from my patients, are they having pain? Are they having anxiety? And the only way to really know is for them to tell me.
And that reminds me of, I remember time yet really sedated and I'd start to come up, down from the sedation. I knew when a family member was in the room who was crying, grieving, grabbing me, and I could feel my anxiety go up. Whereas someone would come in and just hang out, hold my hand, talk to me, tell me a story. It was very relaxing. Even with the staff, I know specific family members that came in my room that just drove me nuts. You're not making the situation better. You crying is not helping.
That's interesting. That's really good to know.
That was not me.
And I get it. I've seen the family members coming into ER rooms that are just hysterical.
Yeah.
And it's not, I get it. They're upset and so worried about their loved one, but it's not helping anything. It gets staff worked up. It gets security involved. It gets, it's not good for the patient.
You can feel it.
Yeah.
Even when you're sedated.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting. What did it do for your anxiety, Amber, when Tyler was awake?
It definitely, I much preferred him awake because he was showing me that he was making steps to get out of there. And I needed those small little things to show me that he was progressing. Even like, squeezing my hand or opening his eyes, things that small were huge to me because it was just like, okay, he's doing something. Where when he was prone or when he was sedated, he just didn't get better. And every day it was like, okay, 24 hours, nothing has happened. Let's try again. Same thing. But when he was awake, I felt like I had things to look forward to each day, even if it was just, okay, the blood pressure's a little better today, or okay, he's sat at the end of the bed and moved his legs a little bit. Like things like that were just huge to, I think, any family member to have something to say, okay, he's making progress.
He's still there.
Yep.
And what was it like to come into the ICU and see Tyler so different? I know that when he got to that hospital, he was hooked up to lots of IV drips and needing tons of support, and we were very frank about how sick he was. What was that like for you?
It was way hard. I think the first day, the night that we got there, was just shock because I walked into the room and he was intubated and it was just me. The air med nurse came in and just got me, and there was so many staff in the room. There was so many drips. There was the vent. It was just a lot going on. And I think going from a small hospital where it was just the nurse and the doctor and the respiratory therapist to that, it just hit me like, wow, he's really sick. And I think that a realization of what is going on, because at the other hospital, it was just kind of like, oh, he has pneumonia. We'll be fine 2 days. And then getting there was a whole different ballgame.
And when you were told like how sick he was, but that he was going to stay awake and hopefully keep moving, what ran through your mind?
It was just complete trust in you guys and just perfect. I want him awake. And if that's what it takes to get him out of here, then do it. And I was all for it. And even when we transferred on ECMO, they came in and explained the same thing, that he's going to be doing a lot of physical therapy. That's just what we do. And I was just like, do it. Let's go for it. Let's start it right now. And to do it while he's asleep. No, I was very happy with it. And I felt like it did. Every day he was doing a little better, which helped me and I think him.
If you want to join in on the conversation, leave a voicemail at 801-784-0472 or reach out to me on Twitter.